Hello everyone. It's me, Chapter One Coffee, and we are back with the next part of the Humankind Cultures tier list, which is the medieval era. Might as well get started on that. So, one moment. Let's see who's first. We've got the Aztecs. Oh yes, the Aztecs. The Aztecs. I am going to be putting in. Oh boy. The medieval era is a difficult one because I think all of the civs are very good for the most part. I think I'm going to be putting the Aztecs in at C tier. So there's a few reasons for this. So, firstly, the Aztecs are militarist civ. That's not one of the reasons I put them in here, but yeah. So the Aztecs are a militarist civ. Their civilization bonus is Huitzilopochtli's Legacy, which modifies the unit production cost by 25%. So it's the same bonus that the Mycenaeans get, except they don't get the experience on units like the Mycenaeans do, which automatically makes that a bit worse. But, you know, it's never bad to have cheaper unit production. So that is, it's a never bad kind of bonus there. So I'm quite happy that they've got that. But yeah. It's fine. Next, we have the Sacrificial Altar, which is their emblematic quarter or district. It provides 5 faith, 5 stability, plus 2 influence from adjacent districts, and unlocks the Sacrifice Population action on the city, which will sacrifice 1 pop to apply Celebrating. Celebrating adds plus 10 stability for 10 turns. Because of how easy it is to get stability with current mechanics, losing population to get a small bonus to stability kind of sucks. And the actual district itself, 5 faith is fine. 5 extra stability is basically a stability plus, so that's fine. 2 influence from adjacent districts kind of falling off by the time we get to the medieval era. That's not quite as powerful as it could be. Or at least influence is a bit not easier to get, but like you'll probably have a couple of holy sites now to rack up your influence score a little bit higher. So I wouldn't say that's inherently a very useful. It also doesn't collect anything as a tile, so I don't think the Sacrificial Altar is very good with current mechanics in there, so I'm going to kind of write that one off. And then we have the emblematic unit, which is the Jaguar Warriors, which is a melee unit that you get when you get access to greatswords. The Aztecs can still build greatswords, they just also have access to Jaguar Warriors. They are a melee unit with 33 strength, and they have the same ability the Gesate had for the Celts in the Classical, in that they have no combat strength penalty from damage. Now, as these strength values get higher, these sorts of effects get less relevant, though it's not irrelevant. But I will say, generally speaking, I mean, the Jaguar Warriors I don't think require any resources to build, so if you really don't have any strategic resources, you might want to pick Aztecs for that. But generally speaking, like, they don't have a super impactful unit. It's not super impactful, because you have to get a couple of techs down the tree to get it, and you can also just build greatswords. If you have the resources, you might as well build the other types of units. Because they have higher strength and the minor. Like if you build greatswords, they have like 36 strength, and if they take damage, they'll go down to 34, which is still higher than the Jaguar Warriors. So Aztecs seem like the kind of civ that if you're in a really bad spot and you don't have strategic resources, you might take them to try slingshot yourself back into the game militarily. But they kind of don't do very much. That's the problem. They're not. I wouldn't. People are going to hate me for my D tier pick, but I don't really think the Aztecs deserve any higher than C tier. It's like I think what really puts them at least at C tier is the fact they do get cheaper unit production, which will be very useful as you move into early modern industrial. So at least they have that going for them. But that's about it. Next, we have the Byzantines. The Byzantines. Oh boy, the Byzantines. The Byzantines are going straight to S tier. I've found the Byzantines are really awkward in this respect, but I think the Byzantines deserve the S tier spot. So they are a merchant culture. You might see a trend here with merchant cultures getting S tier. That's just kind of how buyout works. But let's talk about the Byzantines. So their first ability is Master of Whispers. You get 5% more money on your empire per alliance. There is a wonder in the game called the Statue of Zeus, which has the same effect. You get 5% more money per alliance on empire. The Byzantines if you have, say, a couple allies, and you don't want to be at war with everyone in the game, so you'll probably end up with a couple allies. So let's just say 2 allies. 10% more money on your empire, right? It's kind of like how the Axumites get 10% more money on the city for having a trade route, but even if you don't have any trade routes, or your trade routes get plundered, you're still going to get the extra money for at least having the alliance. So your money output's going to be better. It's not a huge effect. It's not amazing, but it's a little bit extra. Where the Byzantines really shine, and I think this is what sets them as an S tier nation, is their emblematic quarter is probably without comparison in the medieval era. I guess the Ghanaians probably they make more money out of theirs, but the Ghanaians don't have the emblematic unit that the Byzantines do. Dear God. So we'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, the Byzantines get the Hippodrome or Hippodromos, which gives it doesn't collect anything. I think it collects money. I think it might collect money, but either way, you don't really care about it. Yeah, it does collect money, but you're not really too bothered about it collecting money because it provides 3 gold, 3 money. It costs 10 stab. It gives an extra trader slot. Yeah. You get 5 money per access to horse in your entire empire, right? So if you have 10 horse resources, either through trading with people like your allies, who you will be trading with freely, or just other nations. If they have 10 horse things, that gives an extra 50 gold on every hippodrome you build. And you can build this in every territory. And it also provides an additional 25 money per adjacent horse deposit. So if you build it next to a horse deposit, you get an extra 25 gold. So you could easily get 100 gold with enough horses on the map from your hippodrome. You'd need to have like 15 sources of horses plus build one next to a horse deposit. And you get 15, or you get 100 gold from that hippodrome. And you can build, again, one in every territory. So you can make an obscene amount of gold with the Byzantines with hippodromes. Now, they don't make as much as the Ghanaians, but there is something that separates the Ghanaians being A tier, which I will come to when we get there, and the Byzantines, and that is their emblematic unit. The emblematic unit for the Byzantines is the Varangian Guard. They're the first unit to have this ability, which I think the game treats as, or at least the developers are treating as a negative ability. It's a honor code. They cannot retreat, right? If you have Varangians in an army and the army loses the fight, the entire army gets wiped, right? Even if just one Varangian Guard is in the fight, the entire army gets wiped if you have to retreat, right? However, it's a close combat unit. It requires 2 iron, so it's a little bit more iron expensive, but since the Byzantines are focused on trade and alliances, you should be able to get your trade and alliances with the Byzantines to get that 2 iron. They have 43 strength. 43. They are by far one of the strongest units in the era. I think I would probably class them as the strongest unit in the era. And with the Byzantines' ability to generate a huge amount of gold, it's very easy to just spit massive armies of Varangians out, like literally just like pure armies of Varangian guards, and just walk over people, right? You can attack cities directly. Varangian guards will still go toe to toe with leve that are protecting a fortified tile. You don't even need to wait for siege weapons. You don't have to wait for siege weapons. You can just go straight into them with Varangian guard, and you will do perfectly fine. Nobody can fight you in field battles because the Varangians will absolutely slap them. So the Byzantines, I'm putting it S tier because the Hippodrome is an incredibly good district. It's not the best, but in the era, but it is an incredibly good one. The Varangian Guard is easily the best unit in the era, in my opinion. And the Master of Whispers, extra money per alliance. In a single player game, you can quite happily ally like 4 of the AI and get 20% more cash, which is pretty incredible. If you plan on taking the Byzantines and pick up the Statue of Zeus, you can increase that even further. But yeah, like at some point during the game, I think you want to pick up a merchant civ so you can like inflate your income, because it will be very, very relevant to do so when you go into the later eras. And the Byzantines are just a solid pick because their emblematic unit comes at the same time that you would get the Jaguar Warriors, but they have 10 more strength, right? So like, yeah, the power jump at that stage of the game, it's quite early in the medieval. Like you can go hit medieval, immediately tech, war summons, heavy infantry, and then start training Varangians. which means you're 2 techs into the medieval era and you're training like the strongest units in the era that anyone can field. So that's kind of where I'm getting at. The Byzantines can quite happily inflate their economy whilst also pushing hard power rather than soft power being their alliances and their trade networks. But their hard power is also incredibly strong, so their raw military might. You cannot fight the Byzantines easily because they can happily just churn out Varangian guards using all of the money that they have, and just stomp your armies with them, right, and take your cities. So you kind of, and the thing is, because the Byzantines are so strong, you would want to ally them because they're going to be happy to take the alliances because it aids their economy. And if you don't take an alliance with the Byzantines, they'll come run you over with Varangians. So it's kind of like a lose if you do, lose if you don't situation. You can't, if you leave the Byzantines unchecked and ally them so that they leave you alone, their economy's gonna get even stronger because they'll be able to buy all your horses and they'll be able to get more money per their alliance. But then if you don't ally them, they'll just go, oh, well, you're on my borders. We're not allied. I'm just gonna go run you over with Varangian Guard. So I think the Byzantines have earned their spot at the S tier there. I think they are honestly the best civilization in the medieval era. Next, we have the English. The English. The English are going to be coming in. Now, this is a tough one because I kind of need to pick some other civs for different spots. I think the English are going to come in at C tier, and a lot of people are not going to like me for this either. You're really going to hate my D tier pick. I think some of you can already tell what it's going to be. Let me just find this pick for the English. English are going to be coming in at C tier. They're an agrarian civilization. Now, agrarian is very powerful, right? Agrarian is just being agrarian helps you exponentially increase your population. However, I don't really think that the English deserve a spot higher than this because of a few reasons. Their civilization bonus is vassals' labor. You get 3 industry on your farmer's quarter, which means for every 2 farmer's quarters you build, you get an additional population working industry, sort of. If you ignore luxury resources that boost industry from workers, like marble, that is what it does. So it's not that, like, assume a city in the medieval era has like 5 farmers' quarters. It might have more, but say you've got about 5. That's 15 extra industry. It's not bad, but it's not amazing. It's okay. The emblematic quarter is the stronghold, right? The stronghold is a special garrison. I can't remember if you can build it unattached to the city. I never actually played the English. I never really saw a reason to pick them, but yeah. Basically, the Stronghold gives 3 combat strength for units adjacent or inside the district. It replaces the garrison, so yeah, you build it instead of garrisons. It functions as a land unit spawn point, so it's basically just the same as a garrison, but it gives 20 fortification, which is a hell of a lot, so it's very hard to knock down. But most importantly, it increases the range by 2 for range units standing on it. The range unit has to be active on the tile to get the bonus, okay? So if you could, I don't know if you can build unlimited strongholds. I don't think you can, which means you can have 1 per territory, which means you can have 1 archer sitting on it who will benefit from it. So that's the thing. Now, I could be wrong. You could build more, but I didn't play the English. But based on how the other unique districts work, the only unique districts that you can build multiple copies of are from the early modern onwards. I didn't notice any unique districts you could build multiple copies of in the earlier eras. So, unless the English have unless the stronghold is a unique example of that in the medieval era, I'm going to assume you can only get 1. So you're going to have 1 archer sitting on it, which is good. But again, unique garrison doesn't help your economy; just helps you not get killed. And yeah. But you have the longbowmen. Longbowmen are the emblem, the unique unit for the English. They are 32 strength archers, which is slightly stronger than crossbows. I think crossbows are strength 30, and they have 4 range. Right, so they have higher range than crossbows. Crossbows have 4 range as well. However, crossbows can only shoot. They must have line of sight, Longbowmen don't need line of sight. Longbowmen act like a standard archer unit, so they can shoot over other units. For example, crossbowmen, if you have two crossbowmen, one standing behind the other, they won't be able to shoot the unit in front of the other crossbow unless, of course, they have high ground or the unit they're firing at is on higher ground. So it's a kind of a line of sight thing. But yeah, longbows, they can just they can shoot over other units. So you've got a bit of strategic potential from that. But they don't have much. They only have one more strength than other crossbows, or same strength. So they're not like they're not a better unit. You're not getting a better unit by picking the English. You're getting a unit with just some more tactical flexibility, right? And that's it. Like that's why I'd place the English here. 3 industry on farmers' core is like kind of whatever. It's fine, but it's not anything special. The stronghold is a special garrison, right? Whatever. I'm not super fussed by that. And then the longbow itself is like basically just a slight replacement for crossbows. It's not better. It honestly, the longbowmen should just have more range, but than a crossbow, because they did. I don't know why crossbows have 4 range. Crossbows should only have 3 range, but that's just, yeah, these are like balance things that you need to change. But yeah, this is why the English are only getting the C tier on my list, because they don't do anything that stands out to me as being fantastic. But I'd still rate them higher than one nation on this list, so we'll get there eventually. Next on the list is the Franks. They're an aesthete nation. They're a bit of an all-rounder, and I do know that their civilization ability is pending a rework because they didn't change it before the open beta, and it was a bit powerful because of that, but I still wouldn't place them higher than B tier. So the Franks are a B tier aesthete nation. Their civilization ability is Crown Lands. They get 50% more food. 50%, which is a huge amount, right? And by that alone, I should really be putting them A tier, but I know that the devs have said they're changing this to be less, or change it entirely. But even with just 50% food, that's not actually what the Franks are good at. Though it does mean they need less farmers, which means their pops can do other things, so you've got that going for them. But what the Franks, we'll go over all their abilities, but what the Franks are is an all-round civ. The Franks are not exceptional at any one particular thing, but they're never bad because they're okay at everything, right? They're an aesthete nation, so they're based on influence, but we'll come to that in a second when we get to their quarter. Their civilization bonus is more of an agrarian bonus, so it sets you up very nicely to take an agrarian civilization in the early modern, which is the Haudenosaunee, which are actually pretty good. But yeah, generally speaking, like 50% food is a fantastic bonus, but I do know it's subject to change. I really shouldn't change, but I think there's other better civs in the era anyway, so I don't want to put the Franks at A tier when I think there's better examples of A tier civs in the era anyway, so we're going to leave them at B, and I know they're subject to change, so there you go. The emblematic quarter is the Scriptorium. It provides 3 faith, 5 science, and 2 influence per adjacent district. It does cost you 10 stability as well, so it's just it's like I think it picks up research. It does pick up research, so it's like a change that acts as a research quarter, basically. But it provides some faith and it provides some influence. So it's like the medieval era is when you'll probably start building a few research quarters. You probably will be building a few of them. So the Franks having a unique research quarter is actually quite nice because you'll probably build some now, and it does give you a little bit of faith, which is nice. It gives you a bit of influence, which is nice. But again, it's a science and influence and a faith building on an influence it adds up with aesthete, but it's a science and faith building on an aesthete nation with an agrarian ability, which is weird. And then we get to the emblematic unit, which is the Franki Milite, which is basically a heavy knight. So it's a replacement to heavy cavalry. They've got the heavy charge ability, which means they receive higher combat strength when charging. So after they make a move and attack a individual unit, knights are 36 strength, whereas the Franki Milite are 39 strength. I think they require the same. They require the same resources to build. So you get 3 extra strength on your knights, so you get really solid knight units, and yeah, they get even higher strength on that initial charge. So it helps you pick off units right at the start of a battle. If you're the aggressor, you can pick off units very quickly, especially if you have a good mass of them. So we've got a solid militarist unit, a decent science, faith, influence building, a really good agrarian ability, and then the fact they're aesthete. So what are the Franks? The Franks are all-rounders. They're probably the most archetypal all-rounded civilization in the game, as far as I know. You know, they've got a science district, a military unit, and then an agrarian ability, right? It's strange, but it means that whenever you pick the Franks, you'll be able to do everything in the era. I mean, merchant not so much, but you can make money by putting people on traders, so there's that. Expansion kind of goes hand in hand with military, so you can do that plenty. Research you can do because you've got the Scriptorium. You can get agrarian, so you get lots of population because you have food bonus, and you'll get a bit of influence anyway because your Scriptorium gives influence. So they do a bit of everything. They do a bit of everything, and I think that's the important part. That's where they shine, and that's why I'd put them as a solid B tier nation. Like they don't excel at anything in particular, but they are solid at doing a variety of things. Next, we have a A-tier nation next, and that's the Ghanaians. The Ghanaians are a merchant civilization. They give 5 extra. Their civilization ability is the life of luxury. You get 5 extra money per number of access to luxury resources. So every single luxury resource you have access to gives you 5 money. Whether you're buying it or you're producing it yourself, you get 5 extra money per access you have to that luxury resource. So that could, I mean, most games you'll end up with having like an extra 200 gold just from that ability alone. So doesn't have as high potential as, say, the Byzantines, because the Byzantines could obviously, theirs is a percentage, but in terms of raw value, it's much easier for the Ghanaians to get more money out of it initially, but as the era goes on, the Byzantines tend to get more money from a number of alliances. However, we then have the emblematic quarter, which is the luxuries market. This provides 4 money, 3 money per adjacent market quarter, not makers, market quarter, and 3 extra gold per number of trade routes. So just like the Axumites? Was it the Axumites there? No, Satrap's Palace. It's basically the Satrap's Palace of the Middle Ages, or the medieval era, which obviously means it generates an absurd amount of cash. Because you'll have and especially since there'll be more resources will be accessed in this era, or at least nations will have expanded more, and that will mean that there's more resources available, and you'll probably have cemented alliances with certain nations, so you'll have like a concrete flow of trade with certain nations on the map. So you're always going to get a huge amount of cash from the luxuries market. And you can build one in every territory, so you can easily generate an extra 60 gold per luxuries market. You don't even need to build market quarters, you just build luxuries markets and make tons of money. So yeah, the Ghanaians are going to make huge amounts of cash off their civilization bonus and their market. However, I wouldn't say the luxuries market immediately tops the Hippodrome of the Byzantines, because the Byzantines get 5 gold for every access to horse. Now, on certain maps, you'll have less horses. On some maps, you'll have more horses. But the Byzantines can immediately get 25 gold by building it next to a horse deposit. So it ends up being on average if it's next to a horse deposit compared to luxuries markets. And the thing is, the Byzantines' gold income is less affected by trade being disrupted. If the Ghanaians' trade is disrupted, the luxuries markets go way down in value by a war or something, or their trade routes getting damaged. But the Byzantines, as long as they have internal access to horses, like if they have like 5 copies of horses, their hippodromes are still generating 30 gold. Whereas if the Ghanaians lose all their trade routes, the luxuries market only produces 4. So they're a little bit more volatile, and that's why I hold the Byzantines still higher than the Ghanaians in terms of raw power. Then we have the Ghanaian special unit, which is the Maharists. They are a cavalry unit. They replace. Are they a replacement to? They're a replacement. They're not really a replacement for anything. They don't replace knights. You can train knights and Maharists. Maharists require no resources, as far as I know. I don't think they did. They have 35 combat strength, and they get bonus combat strength when fighting cavalry. So the Maharists, basically, if your opponent, if you're up against someone like the Franks who have special knights, or you're up against the Teutons who have special knights, or you're just up against someone who's building a lot of knights, Maharists are basically just a cost-effective way to fight armies of knights. That's pretty much how it goes. There's not much else to say about that. They're a solid mounted unit that goes 1-for-1 with other knights. They will lose to pikemen, but perfectly serviceable against range units, perfectly serviceable against great swords, and they'll win their fights against other mounted units. So, but not as game changing as the Varangians. So again, like the Varangians can go toe to toe with knights as well, and they can slap everything else. Like there's no counter to them. They just are really strong, right? They're a generically hyper strong unit. That's why I wouldn't put the Maharists on the same level. So that's why the Ghanaians are only an A tier, but they are still a very powerful A tier nation because they do make a lot of cash. They make a hell of a lot of cash, and just have reasonably good bonuses alongside that. Next on our list we have Khmer. Khmer is a builder civ. If we can just find their here we go. Here's Khmer. I need to have a little think about this because oh boy. I think we're putting Khmer at B tier. Because, well, they're definitely not D tier, and I don't think they're A tier, so Camaro is going to be one of my B tier civs. The Camaro Builder civs, so they're focused on industry and building districts. Their civilization ability is Servants of Magnificence. They get 2 industry per worker on city or outpost. Not every city or outpost, just on the city that those workers are in. So they give like, say you have 5 people working industry, you get an extra 10 industry. It's not like a massive bonus, but if you're going to have people working industry anyway, then sure, it gives you a little bit extra industry. That's pretty good. So it's not incredible, but it's decent. The emblematic quarter is the Barre. It gives +1 food per district. So every single district you build adds more food to the Barre. So the bigger you build, the more food the Barre produces to offset your growing population. It gives 1 industry per population. So you get food per district. So the more you build, the more food you get, the more population you get. The more population you get, the more industry you get. So they have like an exponential growth mechanic on their barres. And it also gives 2 extra industry per adjacent river. So if you have good spots with rivers, it can give an extra 6 industry or so, but that's like kind of a marginal industry bonus. Generally speaking, the barre is going to be producing about an extra 20 food, 20 industry, or maybe 30 industry, which is really good for a single district. I think it collects food and industry, which makes it particularly good near like woodland rivers, because rivers provide food and the woodland provides industry. So it's good in spots like that where it can generate both food and industry immediately. So a solid district, not game breaking, not like crazy, but definitely solid. And then their unit, which is probably the best part of Khmer, is their special unit, the Dunvigaja, which is a war elephant that follows the same ranged combat rules as a crossbow, so it can only fire if it's got line of sight. It doesn't require any horses. It does require a lot of copper and iron. So if you haven't got enough copper and iron, you can't train them. But they're 42 strength, which is incredibly high strength. Much higher than most other things in the era. And it has the ability to move after making an attack. So you can fire with it, and then you can run your elephant back to behind your infantry line or to more advantageous location. But yeah, gunner units, by the way, like crossbows and stuff, they fight at full combat strength even when defending against close combat attacks. So even if you attack the elephant melee, you're still going to get hit by a 42 strength unit, which is pretty absurd. So yeah, this unit was honestly tied with the Varangians for strongest unit in the era, and I think in some cases it might eke out, but the problem is because it's a cavalry unit, it can't. Well, because it's kind of like because it's a gunner unit, I think technically it can enter fortification tiles, but I don't think it really can. I think the game makes enough of a distinction that it can't do that, but I didn't test, so maybe they can, but I'm going to assume that an elephant doesn't just ignore fortifications because it has the gunner tag instead of a cavalry tag, but who knows. Either way, very solid unit. Basically, Khmer is going to play like a pseudo builder, pseudo warlock civ because they'll focus on playing very heavily into ramping their population and production up, and then switching that into a large military. At least that's how I always saw Khmer should be played. But yeah, a solid Civ, but yeah, we're going to give them B ranking for solid Civ. Next on our list is the Mongols. And the Mongols are my D tier pick. This is where I'm going to get so much hate. I'm going to get so much hate for this from the Humankind community, because they're like, Mongols are OP, Huns are OP, and I've rated both of them pretty middling, honestly, because once again, a one-trick pony, but we cannot take things in a vacuum. So, when do you pick the Mongols? Well, you pick the Huns, which means your Mongol units, the Mongol Horde, gets an extra 3 strength, right? And trust, if you don't take Mongols after taking Huns, then whoever picks Mongols is going to have a really bad time, and we'll get round to it. But they're a militarist civilization. One-trick pony militarist civilization. The first ability is their civilization bonus. Mounted Mayhem. 100% gain from ransacking on your army. As we've already established, until ransacking changes, anything to do with ransacking is kind of trashed here. Making money from ransacking in the medieval era is like, you're basically telling everyone, I actually don't have an economy, by the way, so I have to ransack you to make any cash. Which feels very bad. I mean, you could go Goths, Mongols, but honestly, like, we'll get to why you kind of have to go Huns into Mongols to get anything out of them, but yeah. Similarly to the Huns, their emblematic quarter or district is actually their outpost. They have the same outpost style that the Huns had, which is that their outposts cannot be attached to cities, and once they have enough food, you can pop Mongol hordes out of them, which you can use to attack people. Now, Mongol hordes, again, they are literally just a higher strength version of Hun units, so they can attack twice. They can act a second time after attacking, so they can attack twice. They ransack food. They're a nomad dude, so they get 100% from ransacking. So they ransack more food with the Hun hordes. So you've got that going for you. But they are 29 strength. They are the weakest unit in the era by raw strength value. And you might be thinking, well, that doesn't matter. They get to attack twice. Well, yes. However, if you don't take Huns, Huns will give them +3 strength because they are mounted nomads, right? And plus your strength from the fat cavalry. So if you take Huns, the Mongol Horde actually keeps up with other medieval nations' troops. If you don't take Huns, the Mongol Horde is the weakest unit in the era. By far. Which means that even just standard crossbowmen defending a walled city are going to absolutely shred the Mongols, right? The only reason people think the Mongols are really good is because they're playing against the AI and the AI doesn't know how to handle them. I think if we're talking actual power level, I think the Mongols they are a militarist civ that doesn't have the clout that the Huns had. The Huns have strength in the sense that there's not very many good counters to their units in the era that they pop up in. The Mongols, as soon as you enter medieval and take Mongols, you are fighting crossbows. Crossbows have higher or same strength to Mongol hordes, so you're now playing an archery game, and the Mongol hordes only have 1 attack range. They can only attack tile to tile. They're still ranged, so they don't get retaliation from, like, infantry, but they can only attack tile to tile, which means, generally speaking, the Mongols are going to have a really hard time of it fighting crossbows, especially when they're attacking cities, because crossbows are just going to ping holes in them as they try not to get annihilated, basically. So I think the Mongols, they don't have the same power spike that the Huns have, and their civilization ability of 100% ransack kind of sucks. So I'm putting the Mongols at D tier, guys. I'm going to get a lot of flack for that, but I'm putting Mongols at D tier for medieval. They are in my opinion the worst pick of the medieval era. They crutch on you having taken the Huns, And then their civ ability is worse than the Huns, because at least the Huns give +3 combat to cavalry units later in the game. Like, I don't think in the industrial or early modern industrial you're going to want to be ransacking. You want to be actually just taking a land, right? So, yeah, Mongols are just, and not being able to attach cities and stuff. Like, again, your economy is just going to be pants for the entire era. So, yeah, Mongols, I'm afraid, are just not going to make the cut today. Next, we have the Norsemen, which apparently I'm going to get a bad gateway from the wiki, so it doesn't want me to look at the Norsemen. There we go. Okay, now it's letting me look at the Norsemen. Cool. I couldn't remember precisely what their abilities were, but I know it was to do with naval units, which is kind of air, but also not air, because yeah, the Norsemen are in a bit of a weird spot. They're going to be taking a B spot, not an A tier spot. And not a very high B tier spot either. I mean, I don't want to put them in C because I think they have more going for them in a bit of a weird way than the English and the Aztecs. And this is because of kind of how navies work, sort of. So they're a militarist civilization. Their civilization bonus is they get +3 naval movement speed on all naval units. That includes embarked land units or actual dedicated naval units, and they also get +2 combat strength on naval units. So if you pick the Norsemen, you can't lose naval battles. It just doesn't happen. And also your navies are much faster, right? And now that it's the top tier naval bonus in the game, but that's not saying much because navy's not really that important with the current stage of the game. So I mean, obviously it depends on map type. Like if you play like Archipelago, if there are Archipelago map types, then obviously that's even more relevant. But yeah, that's how it is. Their emblematic quarter is the Naust, or Norst. I don't really know how you say it, but it is a harbour replacement. It gives 5 food per adjacent coastal water and 5 food per adjacent lake. So it gives you a massive amount of food compared to a normal harbour. Massive amount. So it's a very nice way to increase your population growth. Just building one of these, you get a huge amount of food. Do kind of have to be coastal to get the most out of it, but it's fine. But the unique ability of it is that you get 50 gold from ransacking on Empire. So every single Naust you build adds 50 gold whenever you ransack something. This is possibly the one thing that makes ransacking worth it, because being able to ransack some random ass tile in someone's land for like 500 gold is kind of absurd. And that is what the Norse do. They build like 10 Nausts and then they just walk around and they go, oh, look, an undefended part of your city. I'm going to ransack several tiles. Like, I'm going to ransack 4 tiles. I'm going to generate 2,000 gold out of that, which is really good. But it's still based on ransacking. So until ransacking gets changed, I think ransacking takes too long. If ransacking is made to happen faster, then I think this will be more relevant. But it's still a good. But the food bonus is really solid. You can't deny the food bonus, so that's good. But the money from ransack is kind of like, it's a bit niche. It's less niche than the other ransack abilities, but yeah, it's still pretty niche. The real power with the Norse, which is why I think I would put them at B tier rather than C tier, is the Lang Skip, which is their unique emblematic unit. Normal units, or normal people at this stage of the game, normal civilizations, they have transport galleys. Transport galleys are how you embark your units. You get transport galleys; they can move around. They're not very they have quite low strength by the medieval era. Like medieval units should be able to kill transport galleys reasonably, or medieval ships. Transport galleys are 18 strength, so they will die to medieval ships pretty quickly. But the Norse, their Langskips have 33 strength. These are basically just warships. They're warships which are your whenever your land troops embark, the Norse get warships. That's how it is. So the Norse can go. You can go from a nation with absolutely no naval power whatsoever in the classical era, take Norse, and you immediately own the seas because you can just move every single unit you have onto the ocean, and no one can contest you. You can go plunder people's harbors for like 500 gold, and there's absolutely nothing they can do about it. So you can make an absurd amount of gold just using your land army just to plunder people's harbors. But that's not the best ability of them. The best ability of the Langskip is that they ignore penalties from deep water. Now, before the early modern era, when you get proper technology, you can't enter deep water, or else your navies will get lost at sea after a few turns, and then they'll just die. Right? The Norse don't have that. The Norse in the as soon as you click Norse, you can go and find the New World. You can go and explore every tile on the map. You can go find random ass outposts, random ass islands out in the middle of nowhere. You can go put outposts down on them, build cities. You can do what you like, right? So the Norse have a very clear lead in expansion potential when they hit the medieval era. They are like the first one. They got first pick of any non-main continent territory. Or sailing over to a second continent and killing everyone on that continent who might not be expecting a random surprise Norse invasion. Yeah? So the Norse have a couple of those benefits vastly outweigh the fact that they are a naval orientated civ, and the extra movement speed helps you actually do all that exploration and stuff. And if you take the Lighthouse of Alexandria, which is a wonder that you might want to consider picking up in the classical era if you want to go Norse, because the Lighthouse gives you extra naval combat strength and extra movement at sea. So the Norse end up with like +5 movement at sea, so their ships can just sail like 8 tiles, which is absurd. So yeah, the Norse I'm going to put at B tier because I feel the Norse deserve that spot there. Thanks to their unique position. It's not a bad position to have either, and I think that's why the Norse deserve it, as opposed to like, because you would say the 25% producing units is generically more useful, and you would say that the 3 industry on farmers and like the better archers are more useful in general terms, but the Norse hold a unique position of expansion and naval domination that other civilizations will find it practically impossible to match. So I think that's why the Norse deserve that spot in B tier, even if it is the lowest end of B tier. All right. Next civ we have the Teutons. For those of you who are Age of Empires 2 fans, we have the Teutons, and the Teutons are going to be taking my B tier spot. I'm really torn between Teutons being in A tier or B tier, but I think we're going to have to put them in B tier because they're not quite enough. So, Teutons are an expansionist civilization. Their ability, or civilization ability, is spurred by faith. +1 money per state religion follower. I think that's on the capital, but it could just be empire. And +1 science per state religion follower. So if there are 100 people, 100 population on the planet who follow your state religion, you get 100 gold and 100 science per turn, which is a lot. It is a lot. But if you compare the amount of money that the Teutons make from that compared to some of the mercantile civilizations, yeah, it's not actually that much. If you compare the science they make, that is a lot better. The science is really what sets it apart. The money is like nice. The money is nice. Again, cherry on top. But the science is what matters. If you're making 100 extra science, even if you're just making like 50 extra science, but generally speaking, you'll be making about 100 points extra science from that. Which is, yeah, that's really good. That's a huge amount of infrastructure you don't need to build for like research quarters and stuff to start getting a bit of a tech lead in the early medieval. The emblematic quarter is the Kaiserdom. The Kaiserdom exploits industry, which is, yeah, very interesting. So the Kaiserdom exploits industry but has nothing to do with industry. It gives you 1 faith per district in the city. So the Teutons are the first civilization with a massive faith bonus, or like a very, very large. Like the Axumites get a big faith bonus from number of territories you own, but the Teutons come in and they're just like, if I have 20 districts in the city, I get 20 faith. If we have If I have 30 districts in a city, I get 30 faith, which is more than holy sites. So it's very easy for the Teutons to really push their faith. And if people refuse to flip to your faith, then they're going to have a bad time because of their emblematic unit. But that's not the only thing the Kaiserdom gives. So the Kaiserdom exploits industry, gives 1 faith per district, 3 faith per adjacent district, so you get a little faith boost immediately for being adjacent, and then 3 influence as well. It's a bit weird. It actually says on the wiki, it says industry, but then it's got the influence star, and it's kind of confusing. I'm pretty sure it gives influence rather than industry. It could be industry, I don't remember. But either way, it gives a small bonus to either industry or influence alongside, which is just, again, it's just like a little bit of nice stuff. But it's the main purpose is to have get a really strong faith spread with the Kaiserdom. The Teutonic Knights is the emblematic unit for the Teutons. They are heavy cavalry. They replace knights. They have 39 strength as opposed to 36 on knights, and they also have proselyte as their special ability. Which gives them bonus combat strength. I think it's a +3. It might be a +4 against enemies with a different state religion. So they're a 40 plus strength unit against other state religions. So basically the Teutons go, convert to my religion. All of your people are converting. Adopt my state religion. If you say no, the Teutonic Knights kick your ass. If you say yes, then you're going to spread their religion for them, which is going to make their money and science increase further. So again, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, but not quite as much as the Byzantines, because the Byzantines are just going to scale up their cash really hard, and their soft power is a bit more. Religion is very powerful, but I know it's due to be changed. So I'm not going to put too much emphasis on like 1 or 2 religious tenets being overpowered because, I think I don't know. Putting too much emphasis on a feature that we have been confirmed will be changed from its current onset would be somewhat disingenuous to the balance. But I found that the faith benefits from the Teutons are kind of like whether your faith is really well advanced and spreading everywhere, or if your faith is still kind of middling or not pushed very much. If you pick Teutons, you can push it. I think that's the important thing. If you have a bit of an underdog religion and you want to push it and like try to not only cut the benefits of the higher tier religions that other players or other AI are using, but also to boost up your own, the Teutons are a good pick for that. But that doesn't make them super, super strong. It just makes them like, alright. They're pretty decent. They've got a good unit, they've got a decent quarter, they're mostly faith focused, but I think they're still overall pretty decent. And then finally, our last civilization of this era will be the Umiyads. Umiyads Eta. The Umiyads are a science civilization, so they're the first science civ we're seeing scoring above C tier on these charts. The Umiyads are actually really, really good. Really, really good. It's a bit difficult to say exactly why, but I think it's because the jump from if you pick Umiyads, so one of the science civ bonuses is that they can research in the next era. Now, ancient era research in classical is not a massive difference. Classical researching medieval can be a bit of a better difference, but not huge. The Umayyads being able to research early modern allows them to basically rush gunpowder if they want, which gives them a massive military advantage. But not only that, they are also a really solid science civilization for what they do. So let's talk about their abilities. Firstly, we have their trait Learned Friends. It gives +10 science per number of territories on all cities. If you've got 4 cities and you have 10 territories, so your total land count is 10, you have 4 cities, you get an extra 400 science. If you have 4 cities and 20 territories, that's 800 science. So they as soon as you pick Umayyads, you can see a massive science jump. Obviously, medieval tech is a lot more expensive, but especially if you go for early modern tech. But yeah, it's it's a huge science leap just to take the Umayyads, and also it's a science bonus that's going to scale as you progress through the game, because every single new territory you conquer gives more science, and every single new city you get also increases your science output. So as the game progresses, it's not like the Umayyads going to get worse unless they start losing territory, and if they start losing territory, well then you're just having a bad time anyway. Then no amount of science is going to save you. So yeah. Um, what we have next is the emblematic quarter, which is the Grand Mosque. The Grand Mosque doesn't collect anything. No, it collects science. Okay, it collects science, and it acts as a research quarter. It provides 3 science per number of territories. So you basically get a smaller version of your civilization bonus on the Grand Mosque. You can build one in every territory, so uh, you could build like 20 of these things and you'd get an extra, well, assuming you build 20 of them, that means you have 20 territories. That means each mosque is producing 60 science. So again, the if you've played very wide, very expansion heavy, like say you went maybe you started the game as like the Mycenaeans or something, and you conquered one of your neighbors, and then you picked the Persians and you built a couple of extra cities, and then you get into the medieval era and you're like, well, I have four. I have 6 cities because of my city cap, and I have like 15 territories. I'll just pick Umayyads, and then you'll just blitz through the science tree like nobody's business. So, and then you'll get all the early modern tech as well, which the jump between medieval to early modern tech, as opposed to the previous eras, as I said, is much more crucial. There like you start getting percent bonuses in the early modern tech buildings and infrastructure. Like the printing press gives like 20%, or is it like the inventor's house or something? Inventor's house gives like 20% more science rather than like plus 10 science. It gives 20% science, or like rather than like 1 science per researcher, it's like an extra 10% science. So it's you start getting your percentages kick in the early modern. So the Umayyads being able to research into that is a very key part of why they're powerful. The one thing that lets them down is their emblematic unit. It is the Harass. The Harass requires no iron. It doesn't upgrade into anything. It's not a replacement for knights. It's just a light cavalry unit. They have 36 strength, same as knights. They require no iron. They just require 3 copies of horses. So if you don't have any iron, I guess the Umayyads can still get quote unquote knights. They don't have the charge ability, but they do ignore zones of control, so it helps them ride down range units, I suppose. Their special ability is enforcers, which helps them drain additional stability during sieges. Now, draining, I think I finally figured out what draining stability during sieges does. So when you siege someone, it takes a number of turns for the levy in the city to die off, right? And I think that's based on how fast you drain stability from them being besieged. So normally it's a fairly static value. And I think if you siege someone with a bunch of harass as part of the Umayyad's army, it drains out their levy much faster. I think that's what it does. I can't be 100% sure because, again, I didn't have enough time in the game to test everything. But I think that's what it does. But generally speaking, I'm going to put the harass as it's an okay emblematic unit, but I'm not quite sure what its real strength is. So as far as I'm concerned, it's kind of like a knight without charge, which makes it kind of worse than a knight. But I guess you get them a bit earlier, so that's nice. So yeah, it's a bit. Well, no, I think you still need to research chivalry to get them as well. So either way, the strength of because the Umayyads are like really strong in 2 categories. Again, they're not S tier because they're strong. They're really strong in 2 categories, but they're not. They then fall down a bit on their unique units, so they're not quite strong in all categories like the Byzantines are. So that's where I place the Umayyads. They're a solid A tier civilization. I think their emblematic unit being not quite as powerful is not so much of an issue because they can research into the next era and get gunpowder units very, very quickly. I had a Umayyad game where I went science civ, so I went like Babylon, quickly aged up into Greece, quickly aged up into Umiyads, and I had like flintlock riflemen like before people had even entered the medieval era. I think, or at least some of the civilizations were not amassing medieval armies, and I had flintlock rifles from like the end of the early modern era, which are like 46 strength range units versus like 25 strength swordsmen. It was just like instant kills, just like one-shotting people behind castle walls and stuff. It was pretty crazy. So I think the Umayyads, yeah, that's one of the fact that emblematic unit is weaker is not as relevant because they do have the option of teching into the next era to get those stronger early modern units a bit faster, like halberdiers and arquebuses, and they can even get mortars, so they can get cannons and shit a bit earlier, which is pretty cool. So overall, that's my tier list for the medieval era. Uh, I know some people are going to disagree with this. I'm gonna get some hate for putting the English and the Mongols so far down, but I don't care. That. My personal experience is that I didn't think the Mongols were very strong. Against the AI, sure, but like I don't think like in practice the Mongols are as powerful as people are making them out to be. So I would much rather pick most other civilizations in the medieval era than pick the Mongols. So yeah, but as always, as I said, I'll end every video saying that I really enjoyed the open dev. I fully recommend everyone that's curious about Humankind. If you're curious about it and you're like, oh, I wonder if it'll be good. My personal opinion is it was already loads of fun to play. Some balancing things aside, some little quirky stuff that needs to be sorted out or smoothed out. I have full confidence Amplitude is going to release a fantastic title. I don't want to toss around the term Civ Killer because they're very different games. The whole system that Humankind or the Endless series, the Fidsy system, is completely different to how Civ handles its like populations and districts and stuff. They handle them differently, and the way they handle warfare is very different as well. I think Humankind has a much better scale of things, and it's also a lot more realistic. I think Civ's kind of gone down a bit of a rabbit hole in recent years, but yeah, I would say I would recommend it. That's all I can say. I would recommend it. From playing the VictorOpendev, it's come a long way. It's got a long way to go, but I'm confident that Amplitude's going to make that distance. So yeah, there you have it. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed another tier list from me regarding the Humankind cultures for VictorOpendev. I will be back, well, very shortly, next video, if you stick around for it, where I'll talk about the early modern cultures. And yeah, it's been me, Chef Commander Coffee. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully. Have a good one. See you guys around.